So first I want to start off talking about the Montgomery County Planning Department and who we are. We are the agency that is responsible for the majority of land use planning and development review in the county. We are a department of 150 talented staff who do a wide variety of things. Just for talking about myself very briefly, I've been in this role for almost a year. Prior to that, I was deputy director for 4 years, so I've been with the planning department for 5 years. And I have to say, this is one of the best planning departments in the county. We do have a national reputation for doing outstanding and innovative land use planning for Montgomery County. So the planning department aims to improve the quality of life for all of our residents by enhancing communities and natural and built environment for current and future generations. We do that through crafting master plans for specific areas. Through our analysis of the area and in engaging with the community, we craft recommendations for how to develop or redevelop land for different uses, whether it's for housing, for transportation, parks, schools, the environment, or others. Master plans legally amend the general plan, and I will explain what the general plan is later. And they govern how the county approves, prioritizes, and regulates development. So one thing that's particularly unique about us is that the planning department is actually not part of the county government. We are a part of the Maryland National Capital Park and Planning Commission, or MNC PPC, the Commission, Park and Planning Commission. Those are some of the different ways people refer to us. The commission is a bi-county entity that was established at the state level back in 1927 that is primarily responsible for land use planning in Montgomery County and Prince George's County, as well as parks in this county and parks and recreation in Prince George's County. So we have 5 departments altogether: the planning department and Montgomery Parks on the Montgomery County side, Prince George's Planning Department, Prince George's Parks and Recreation, and we have Essential Administrative Services. Another important component of the commission is our planning board. We actually have 2. The Montgomery County Planning Board, and this is an image of the 5 individuals on our planning board. They are responsible for approving the majority of development projects in the county. So a lot of what you see on the ground, whether it's this building, Pike and Rose, other places, our department, my department, and our staff working with county agencies reviewed those proposals to make sure that they will help to implement our master plans and other priorities for the county, and then they ultimately go to the planning board for final approvals so that they can actually go get built after that. Another important role for the planning board is that they are land use advisors for the county council. Our county council are the ones who actually approve all of our master plans, and they also approve zoning changes. Zoning is the laws that regulate what actually can be built in different parts of the county. And so we very much work very closely with the planning board and the county council on all of our work. So I want to talk a bit more about the work that we do at the planning department. We have a very, very robust work program. This is a list of our current master plans and studies. We have 2 master plans that are at the county council right now, starting their review process. One is the countywide pedestrian master plan. We just had our first work session with the council just yesterday or 2 days ago. And that plan is really, really important because it is about how can we make Montgomery County safe, attractive, and accessible for all residents to walk and roll, not just in the more urbanized areas, but in our traditional suburban areas and also in our rural areas. As you all know, pedestrian safety is a major issue in this county. You know, unfortunately, this county has experienced pedestrian injuries and fatalities, and so we're working very closely with the council and the county government on that. But we also want to make sure that residents have other ways to get around the county and not have to drive everywhere, and so making an environment that's comfortable and safe for residents to walk is a part of that. Another master plan at the council is our Fairland and Briggs Cheney master plan. Fairland and Briggs Cheney is in our eastern part of the county, and this is a really important master plan that will help to transform this area and to incentivize future real estate development and to bring additional amenities to a part of the county that has not experienced as much attention in terms of development or infrastructure as other parts of our county. I'm not going to go into details about all of these plans, but I just want to just mention a few others. We have our Tacoma Park Minor Master Plan Amendment that is just starting our planning board process. We actually have a public hearing coming up very soon for that. And again, several other plans and studies underway. One is the Great Seneca Plan. That is an update to an earlier plan focusing on the Great Seneca Science Corridor, where a lot of our life sciences industry is located. We're also doing a University Boulevard Corridor plan focusing between the area between Wheaton and the Beltway. And we've got other important studies underway, such as an incentive zoning update. We're looking at a number of housing strategies to expand the options that residents have to be able to live in this county, to be able to afford places that meet their needs. And we've got a couple of other master plans that'll be starting up soon. And we have another project that I'll talk about a little bit later, our Community Equity Index. But there's more. So we have, again, other projects underway during this fiscal year. I'll just mention a couple of them. We have a Friendship Heights urban design study. Friendship Heights, as you know, part of it is in DC, part of it is in Montgomery County. That's an area that has seen a lot of declines in terms of its retail activity, but there is a very well-established residential community, and so we're going to be working with them and property owners to look at, to start to do some groundwork to understand what's happening in that area that could help ultimately lead to some further work to identify recommendations to bring some further enhancements. And then we're also, a new project that we just got funding from the council is our Randolph Road Corridor Study. We're going to be looking at the area, particularly around the Glenmont Metro, looking at how we can make that community more robust in terms of future development, enhancements for the residents who live there, and also make it easier and safer for residents to walk to and from the Glenmont Metro. So I want to just talk a little bit about the residents that we serve in Montgomery County. As I'm sure you all know, Montgomery County is a very diverse county. We are almost 60% people of color. And we do a lot of data analysis and research on demographics for the county. So if any of you are interested in this type of data, if it might be helpful for your businesses, definitely go to our website, montgomeryplanning.org. We have a lot of resources. And as you can see through the bar chart as well as the map, and I'll explain the map in a second, Montgomery County back in the 1960s was majority white, and obviously today that is not the case at all. And so you can see over time, over the decades, how the county has diversified. And if you look at this map, this is a spatial representation of where different racial and ethnic groups are located within a county, but focusing on where there may be certain groups who are the predominant racial ethnic group, or there is no predominant group. And what I want to highlight is all of the yellow areas. What that means is there is no racial ethnic group in a county that is the predominant or even the majority. So those are our particularly most diverse parts of the county. And I'm sure you can recognize quite a number of those areas, but it extends really right across the county, and that's a trend that I think we're going to be seeing more of in the future. So my department has produced quite a number of other data tools, particularly looking at demographics, as well as other information like development review. But I want to highlight a GIS. GIS is a Geographic Information Systems. It's basically a mapping software. And we did a GIS story map looking at trends in racial and ethnic diversity in a county between 1990 and 2020. So if you look at the data that I just showed, this is sort of a deeper dive into looking at how and where this diversification has happened. So I definitely encourage you to take a look at this on our website. There's a lot of data, a lot of maps, and you can look at a breakdown per racial and ethnic group in terms of looking at, for example, there's a screenshot at the top, it's maybe a little bit hard to see, but it's the Hispanic population in 1990 and where they're located in a county. And then the one at the bottom is the Hispanic population in 2020, where they're located. You can definitely see that there are more Hispanic residents where they've lived in a county has spread out over time. We've done it for all of the different racial and ethnic groups in a county. So I want to transition to a really important initiative by our department that really is a foundation for all of our work, and that is our equity and planning agenda. You know, again, at the end of the day, we serve a very diverse county, and it is our responsibility to make sure that all of our residents are successful and can thrive now into the future. Part of our challenge is that my profession, the land use profession, land use planning profession, real estate development have made decisions over the previous decades that really created inequitable outcomes for our residents, created segregated communities. And so our job now is to make sure that we address those inequities that already exist and that the future planning that we do does not create new inequities. And so we created this initiative about 3 years ago that really focuses on making sure that equity is a foundational part of our work. And we did a framework document back then that includes this very important sort of mission related to it, which is that developing this equity agenda will require constant attention to institutional racism's influence in all planning and zoning processes. So this is really not about sort of checking a box as we're working through the planning process or the development review process. It really has to be a lens that informs all of the different pieces of what we do. And so since 2020, we have done quite a lot to implement our equity agenda. We have several ongoing efforts. One is very broadly this equity lens for master plans, and that's really, it includes a lot of different things, but it's basically about whenever we do an area master plan or a functional master plan like the pedestrian master plan that I mentioned earlier, we have to make sure that equity is infused throughout the entire process of developing those plans as well as in the recommendations that get developed. We also want to make sure that our community engagement is equitable and that we are able to reach as many residents and invite them to the process and make sure that their voices are heard, and I'll talk about that in a minute. We also have an internal equity peer review group of our staff across different divisions and who also represent different racial and ethnic diversities, who also provide sort of a second set of eyes and minds to think through and vet the type of work that we do to make sure that our planning processes are equitable. And we also require that all of our staff take 8 hours of equity training every year. It's actually a part of their evaluation. And then there are several tools, some of which I mentioned earlier, that we've completed. Equity focus areas mapping, which I'll mention in a minute. I mentioned the racial and ethnic diversity trend story map. We've done some other projects, such as looking at neighborhood change in the region and where there have been patterns of displacement and gentrification or low income concentration. We also completed a mapping segregation project, which looked at within the Down County area, basically inside the Beltway, where there were racially restrictive covenants on housing properties during the 20th century that prevented Black, Jewish, and other residents from being able to purchase those properties. As I mentioned, community engagement is really fundamental to a lot of the work that we do, and it has to be a part of every plan that we produce. And because the county is so diverse in a lot of different ways, we have to make sure that, again, every resident feels that they have the opportunity to be involved, so that we're not, hearing the same voices all the time that don't really represent the entire community. But we also recognize that not everybody is going to come to a community meeting that's after work that we may host. They're not going to necessarily go to a planning board hearing or even a county council hearing. Some residents will do that, but not everybody is going to want to engage in those types of processes. But those are not the only ways that residents can make their voices known. So we use a lot of different strategies to reach people. We put ads at bus shelters that have QR codes or phone numbers where you can text your comments about your thoughts in an area where we're doing a plan. We do both in-person as well as virtual meetings as standard practice now for all of our master plans, because virtual meetings, you can do that from your car, you can do it from wherever. It works very well for folks. We do meetings in multiple languages to better talk with residents. We've done meetings that were in Spanish with English translation or English interpretation. We've done, more recently in the Great Seneca area, we did a community meeting that was in Mandarin Chinese because we work with a Chinese American organization. We do a lot of pop-ups. We go out to the community, whether it's at a community festival, outside of a store or a park or some other place where we can kind of catch residents on the go. We do door-to-door knocking in apartment buildings. That's a really great way to get to folks and to really get their ideas and concerns. We do online questionnaires. We translate documents. So this really kind of shows you that, you know, there is no one way to reach all of our residents, and that is really important, again, to make sure that everyone feels that they are invited to participate. I mentioned earlier equity focus areas mapping as one of our more recent data tools. And this map shows essentially the parts of the county that are majority people of color, majority low income, and majority of residents who speak English less than very well. And as you can see, this really is a way to kind of particularly identify those areas and also to look at some of the data for those residents compared to countywide averages. And we definitely have seen a trend where, for example, in EFAs, are more likely to be more residents who have only a high school diploma, you know, compared to the other parts of the county. We typically will use this EFA mapping as sort of an overlay for our master plans. So if we're looking at a particular area, let's just say Fairland and Briggs Cheney, for example, we can identify whether or not there are any EFAs in that part of the in that area and look kind of deeper at those particular communities. We also use this as a tool for our pedestrian master plan, where we looked at pedestrian crash data for communities that are within EFAs and compared that to non-EFAs, EFA areas. And what we saw was that there are more likely to be severe or fatal pedestrian crashes or injuries in EFAs than in non-EFA areas. And so that means that those residents are particularly vulnerable to those types of hazards, and we have to make sure that we're responsive to that. And then more recently, we completed another tool that helps to support our equity work. This is our Community Equity Index. This is sort of a whole presentation in itself, and I encourage you to go to our website. But the purpose of it is essentially to identify which parts of the county are particularly advantaged areas and which parts are disadvantaged areas, looking at a whole set of metrics such as educational levels, whether or not people are homeowners, income levels, et cetera. And so this isn't just focusing on, for example, the EFAs, it's looking at the entire county. And there are parts of the county, particularly in the western parts of the county, that are particularly advantaged areas, either because of income, education, homeownership levels, et cetera, and other parts of the county that are more disadvantaged with regards to those metrics. So I'm going to just transition and talk really briefly about Thrive Montgomery 2050. This is the general plan that I mentioned earlier. We just, working with the county council, updated it last year for the first time in almost 60 years. And it's really intended to be a resource that is going to serve as an umbrella for all of our future community planning for this region, or for this county. It is a resource for my department, for the planning board, as well as for county agencies and for the development community in terms of how we make decisions about what our communities will look like in the future. Thrive has 3 pillars that are sort of interspersed throughout: economic health, community equity, and environmental resilience. So our Thrive Montgomery 2050 is a little different from our other master plans in the sense that it's really a high-level policy plan. It doesn't say specifically where a future school is going to go in a particular area. It's really about what direction will this county go in the future in terms of accommodating future development and in making sure that our residents have the infrastructure and amenities that they will need. So it's really about this long-range vision, and it will guide, again, future master plans, public infrastructure decisions, private development, and other resources for this county. So this just gives you kind of an overview of how it's structured and the different chapters with Thrive, but I really just want to point out just a few things. In addition to those 3 pillars, Thrive really sets forth a new vision for this county that really developed as kind of an auto-oriented, kind of sprawling county over the previous decades. But the reality is that we have very little sort of greenfield land left to develop. So what that means is the county is still going to be growing into the future, but where is all of that growth going to go? We have to look at infill development, redevelopment opportunities. A good example is Pike and Rose, as just an example of that, where we have to convert areas that may have been underperforming retail or office or even a parking lot into places where we can build new housing, new office, new grocery stores, new parks, et cetera. We also need to make sure that we leverage our transportation corridors, particularly those that are adjacent to transit, to support that growth. And it also puts forth this notion of complete communities. And what that is about is that, instead of a resident living in an area of the county that doesn't have a grocery store nearby or a library or some other important amenity, and they have to get in their car and get on the Beltway or 270 to get to those resources, we want to make sure that every community has those types of amenities closer to home. So there's this notion of 15-minute living that would reduce driving and make these communities more complete and more attractive places for our residents. So I also want to talk a little bit about what Thrive says about economic competitiveness, particularly for this audience, since you're all business owners, and obviously this is an issue that's near and dear to your heart. And Thrive very much supports any efforts to make this county a more economically strong and vibrant. Again, economic competitiveness, economic health is one of the 3 pillars in Thrive. And this is not exactly an economic development plan that MCEDC, Montgomery County Economic Development Corporation, would do that was talk specifically about how to attract businesses. But what this does is says that land use planning, community planning, development actually is a tool to support economic development by creating attractive, walkable, vibrant places where businesses want to come and locate and employ residents, and also where these workers will want to live. And so this is our way of supporting the county's economic development opportunities, and also understanding that having more housing that residents can afford is also an economic development strategy too. And so there are different ways that through the work that we do, whether through master plans or development review, can help to support those goals. And so lastly, just to wrap up, again, the Montgomery County Planning Department, the Planning Board, the Commission, all the agency partners that we work with, as well as with the state and around the region, but just focusing on Montgomery County, economic health is really fundamental to the success of this county, both now and into the future. And so my department is very committed, again, to doing our part to support economic health, to creating opportunities where small business owners, bigger companies, and others who create jobs and employ residents can be successful, where your workers, where you can have a great community to live as well. I want to also just give a brief shout out to the Commission's efforts to support minority businesses. As I noted, my department is part of the Maryland National Capital Park and Planning Commission, or MNC-PPC. We have a table outside with a representative of our minority business program. Again, a commission has contracting opportunities. All of our departments have our own contracting opportunities, but the commission as a whole does as well. So I wanted to just put that plug in for you to go out and talk to the staff there and look for any opportunities where you can work with the commission and to support your businesses. So with that, thank you so much for this opportunity to speak with you all. Here's my contact information and how you can get more information about Montgomery Planning. Thank you.